Dave Collins is the Director General of Policy and Coordination at the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. And for those of you who are not familiar with that, it's very briefly, it's a opportunities agency. It's a business promotion agency. It's very large. It has a long history, more than 30 offices around Western Canada, Eastern Canada, I believe. So it's a large agency. Some of you are employed or working in the same capacities in your communities. So I'm sure this is highly relevant, or we'll judge that a little later, I suppose. But thanks very much for being here, for traveling so far. It's all yours.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here at the end of this process. Wasn't without its challenges along the way, as you've heard allusions to this morning. It is difficult to get around the region, hey, Carlos? It takes time, it takes patience, but one can make it happen if one is committed to it. The focus of my presentation is going to be just to talk a little bit about Atlantic Canada, some challenges between Atlantic Canada, or those that I see anyway, as a peer reviewer for this project, and the NORA-Region. Just a little bit about the ACOA mandate. Again, as Keith mentioned earlier, a little bit about the collaboration that already exists, which I'm happy to say is true, and I hope to will continue. I'm sure it will. And also possibilities for future collaboration. So I'm hoping that this will pave the way for greater things to come. As a practitioner, in my presentation, I wanted to build in several what I call portals or doorways through which NORA could possibly enter through the Atlantic region. So, Lars, if you pay attention here, and Jacob, you'll pick up on some of them as I go through. They also might serve to illustrate how the governments, the university sector, and the private sector work together in Atlantic Canada. So maybe we can learn from each other. So, here's the map. I thought I'd just put this up here to situate you. This is Atlantic Canada, the bits to the east of the line that we've drawn through here. 4 provinces, Newfoundland and Labrador, which is where I'm from. I'm from St. John's. Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. In case you weren't aware, Canada is the second largest country in the world, 9.9 million square kilometers. You won't drive across that country in one day, I can assure you. It will take a full day just to get across the island of Newfoundland and Labrador. So it's a huge country. It's divided into 10 provinces and 3 territories. And you can see where Greenland is, Iceland, the Faroes, and a little portion of Norway on the map. So there are actually quite a lot of historical ties with Iceland and Greenland, and more recently with Norway through the emergence of the oil and gas sector. As the peer reviewer for the NORA Territorial Review, there were several similarities that I noticed. Keith has also alluded to some of these, but these are ones that I see as being probably the main ones. There are others, arguably, that could be added to the list. These are Atlantic-wide issues. Both regions are affected by population growth challenges. Atlantic Canada is a relatively small region with a population base of 2.3 million people. The average age is higher in Atlantic Canada than the rest of the country, as Keith mentioned, for Newfoundland and Labrador. And it's also increasing faster than in most other parts of Canada. The region's net out-migration and low levels of fertility and immigration have actually slowed population growth, although some growth has resumed at very modest levels in recent years. Net international migration is probably the most positive and consistent, demonstrating a commitment, I think, from governments, both provincial and the federal government, to attract and retain more immigrants from other countries. So these factors threaten the supply of skilled labor in the Atlantic region, which is already becoming quite tight. This will pose a significant risk to sustainable growth in the Atlantic economy over the medium term. Atlantic Canada is also a very, very rural region, with almost half of Atlantic Canadians living in rural areas, compared with 20% for all Canadians. In fact, we're the most rural region in Canada. Thirdly, there is a shift to urbanization, which is evident in Atlantic Canada. People are leaving the slow-growth regions for cities. They choose to live in urban cores or in areas within commuting distance of these cities. This allows them the option of combining urban incomes with rural living. Resource industry closures, particularly in forest products, which is Newfoundland and Labrador has certainly seen its share of closures in that regard, have had a significant impact on our rural communities. Many of these communities are remote from robust urban economies where economic growth is diversifying and increasingly knowledge-based in the Atlantic. Fourthly, Atlantic Canada's economic development has traditionally been driven by the region's wealth of natural resources, minerals, fish, forestry, and agriculture in particular. Resource-based industries are going to remain an important contributor to our region's economy. There's no doubt about that. But they need to continue evolving to become more responsive, more competitive in today's changing global environment. Finally, I wanted to say a few words about our transportation system because I do see a similar situation. Atlantic Canada's transportation system is comprised of a complex array of infrastructure, services, and flows. But with a rapidly growing and changing global economy, Atlantic businesses have adopted practices such as supply chain management to improve their productivity or take advantage of new market opportunities. Looking ahead, this will require improved marine and other transportation services to bring supplies to the region and ensure rapid delivery of products to key markets. So given the similarities between Atlantic Canada and the NORA-Region, there's already a good collaborative relationship that exists between the two regions. One could argue that it is a fledgling relationship so far. It's early days, but nevertheless, the fundamentals are there, and we've already started in some areas. In late 2009, Smart Labrador Incorporated, a client of ours, partnered with NORA to facilitate a dialogue, information sharing, and innovative partnership regarding living in and developing the northern, rural, and coastal communities of the North Atlantic region. So the North Atlantic Knowledge Network is an online tool that is being built on the premise that small coastal communities can, in fact, develop greater sustainability and viability by sharing knowledge through ongoing dialogue. In this changing world, having access to pertinent information and expertise is critical to economic success. So both Atlantic Canada and the NORA-Region understand this to be true and are working together to facilitate this exchange of information. As mentioned in the OECD review report, another example of successful collaboration between the two regions is a partnership developed between the Cruise Islands of the North Atlantic partners. These involve Newfoundland and Labrador, Cruise Greenland, Cruise Reykjavik in Iceland, Cruise Tórshavn, the Faroes, and the Cruise Orkney Islands. So by working together, the 5 partners hope to increase cruise passenger sales and participation on already established transatlantic sailings. So, moving forward, this is my second last slide. I think there are a number of areas where Atlantic Canada and the NORA-Region could work together. And these are the ones that come to my mind as a peer reviewer and, as I say, as a practitioner. In the energy sector, as traditional sectors such as forestry have struggled recently, Atlantic Canada's energy sector has indeed provided a significant source of economic activity in the region over the past decade. Keith has talked quite a bit about that. There's a good side of that, and probably some people would argue a negative aspect to it as well. But the government of Canada created something called the Atlantic Energy Gateway, which is, I think, another useful potential portal, created to better coordinate the development of the Atlantic renewable energy sector by fostering collaboration between the government, other provincial governments, and the private sector in the region. The purpose of this gateway is to focus on existing and new research and on best practice models from around the world. The objective is to maximize Atlantic Canada's potential with respect to clean and renewable energy. So obviously there's quite an area of common interest there. The aquaculture sector is another one where further collaboration, I feel, could take place. In this regard, COA Newfoundland and Labrador recently, in fact, issued a letter of offer to help fund a collaborative cod aquaculture research initiative between the Nordic region and Newfoundland and Labrador. Proposed research, called Diet and the Early Development of Cod, is expected to provide valuable information on how to optimize cod growth, survival, and performance during its early life stages. Already we've heard that our NORA colleagues have approved a similar complementary research initiative. The Nordic-led initiative, Cod Atlantic, will see Nordic and Canadian researchers work together to identify the molecular mechanisms influencing the successful transformation of cod larvae into high-quality juveniles. So while there are still a number of challenges to be addressed, it is our collective hope that longer term, the cod aquaculture industry can help diversify rural economies in both the Nordic region and Atlantic Canada. The tourism sector could also be an area where more collaboration could benefit both regions. An initiative that has been successful in Atlantic Canada is the Atlantic Canada Tourism Partnership. It's a good example of the benefits of the federal and provincial levels of government working with the 4 provincial tourism industry associations in pursuit of shared goals. The Grossmorn Institute of Sustainable Tourism, as mentioned in the OECD report, is another example of how various partners are cooperating to help entrepreneurs in Atlantic Canada expand the adventure ecological tourism sector. The agency's investments in entrepreneurship and business skills development initiatives aim to ensure that more Atlantic Canadians develop the motivation and the skills they need to successfully start, sustain, and grow a business. In my view, there are ample opportunities for SMEs in the NORA-Region to collaborate and build strategic alliances with SMEs in Atlantic Canada. As Carlos alluded to earlier, one of the recommendations or one of the conclusions, observations was that the private sector is pretty underdeveloped in the NORA-Region. So we feel that we're making some headway in this regard, and if we can collaborate, I think that will be a very good thing. We've been working in a couple of areas I wanted to mention, young entrepreneurs in particular, and also women in business, both initiatives that we're quite pleased with. Finally, advanced technology development, especially technologies that focus on our adjacency to the sea. If you remember the map, we're touched by the sea in Atlantic Canada, and certainly that is the one significant characteristic of the NORA-Region. So, especially technologies that focus on our adjacency to the sea, in an area that may offer potential for future collaboration. As I said earlier, innovation and commercialization are key operational priorities of ACOA. The agency continues to increase activity in and try to build capacity in innovation, R&D, technology adoption and adaptation, and so on. And our hope that this will contribute to the overall economic growth of the region. I just want to mention some of the key sectors in which we have invested heavily to pave the way for innovative work in our region include aquaculture, biotechnology, information and communications technology, which I think is of particular interest to the NORA folks these days, environmental technologies, health and medical research, and I think there's a possibility of some strong collaboration in the area of human genomics, manufacturing and processing, and last but not least, ocean technologies. Just a couple of words about ocean technology, since I am from Newfoundland and Labrador. Our university and other institutions have been building human resource capacities in numerous areas that underlie Newfoundland and Labrador company capabilities in a number of areas, including ice engineering, radar, underwater acoustics, maritime surveillance, autonomous underwater vehicles and remotely operated vehicles, and marine simulators. There is an organization which was created in 2005 known as Ocean Advance, established again another possible portal to foster and promote the development of the ocean technology cluster in the province. This is a multi-stakeholder regional technology cluster governed by a board of directors whose members come from the private sector. So, ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I just want to say that we're open for business. My message is a very positive one on behalf of Atlantic Canadians and ACOA. We feel that today's communication technologies make it possible to work together in real time, across time and distance, and remove barriers. So we feel it makes sense to work collaboratively in key areas to ensure we're not reinventing the wheel as we look for solutions to common challenges and opportunities. So thank you very much for listening. I hope I wasn't too long.